Hey guys, welcome to the Casey catch up. I'm going to call you Mr. Voyager Foiler because you've done such a good job, I guess, stoking the fire that is, downwind foiling and the edits and that like the Instagram page you've sort of cultivated has been awesome to watch, and the conditions you always have in Oahu certainly gets me excited to get over there this year in July. But yeah,
Yeah,
thanks for coming on, Simeon, and maybe give us a bit of a background on your who you are.
yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, stoked to be on here. Stoked to finally chat and meet you. It's kind of fun. I think you guys are doing a lot better at the editing nowadays. Josh's putting out great edits. You're putting out great edits. It's kind of like lighting a fire under my butt to get good content out there. But yeah, it all started. It must have been like 3 years ago now. Um, Before this, I was a canoe paddler. Did a lot of. I probably spent the last 12 to 14 years of competitive racing. I was always a surfer in my background. So when we saw foiling kind of take off on Oahu, I obviously got into it, but then, kind of later I could see the vision of possibly downwinding. I know that you guys in Australia, the guys on Maui, they were doing it, but I was just kind of like still kind of skeptical. I think the first video I saw was Matahi on a go foil, and he was downwinding. I think he was that one who was sitting down or just going crazy, and I was like, wow, that doesn't look like fun, or just, he can't be going that fast. I was super skeptical when I saw that clip. Um, but as I started foiling and got addicted to the sport of foil surfing, I had all my wheels turning in my brain, thinking, like, is this possible? What's possible? And I remember seeing Foil Wizard, or yeah, Scotty McNally, Jack from town, and Adam complete their first Keiko's run, and I was just pumped. Um, those guys were like the top foilers at the time. They could they could pump, they could surf, they could stay up really good. But at that moment, they were still like it was such a new frontier for them to be downwinding.
Mm.
That's kind of like where I kind of developed a relationship with those guys because I could kind of see it all happening and see that they wanted to learn, but like they didn't know where to look or how to start or when to go or it's just kind of like how like surfers in general. I mean, you're a stand-up paddler too, so
Mm.
you kind of tune in to like pay attention to wind forecasts. We pay attention to when low tide and high tide is. We pay
Yeah.
attention to direction of swell, direction of wind, and it was cool because I was, like I said, I was able to develop a relationship with these guys where, as a pilot for the past 12, 14 years, those are some of the things that we kind of tuned into. And, I would help those guys like, hey, man, like, quit looking back, like all the bumps are going to form and develop right in front of you. Hey, you want to go low tide, trade winds are really good, 15 to 25 miles an hour. We get a pretty consistent flow of trade winds down here on Oahu. Um, but yeah, no, I just remember it being having an aha moment just watching these guys, and just the light bulb went off in my head that like, wow, this is amazingly so special what's going on and what these guys are doing. I have to get my GoPro out and follow these guys or capture all this because it was so special. Um,
Yeah, so
and it
actually
was
let's I want to two things I want to pull out of that while you're just talking. One was the downwind, like the downwind paddling experience and like looking forward and preempting bumps forming. That's something that,
right.
you coming from an outrigger, me coming from a stand-up sort of downwind background, we take it for granted. Honestly, it's like when I'm looking at the ocean, people looking at completely different things. Like you said, people looking
Right.
back, it's like, man, nothing's going on back there. That's history in front. Like you got to preempt.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I picked up on was you were talking about how you were um, following on a ski. So were you like on duty lifeguarding, or like or you just sort of had your ski out there following, or how did that sort of evolve?
So I would go on my coastal patrols and run into these guys,
Yeah,
and just kind of watch it happen and just kind of almost like kind of make sure that they were safe and okay because
yeah,
at the time it was so wild and it was so um risky. with a lot of consequence because a lot of the guys were taking off on their prone board, pumping out to sea and making their way down the coast.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, half where I would kind of watch, make sure that they're safe, but also kind of like observe from a distance
Yeah.
what they were doing.
For
And
sure.
then, the times where we would go explore more or film, for sure I'd take out our skis and on our days off
Mm.
and kind of follow and really learn and dive into it.
Yeah. So you were
But
literally
yeah,
running safety, kind of like, people talk about the helicopters coming and like
yeah,
buzzing them, being like, "Oh, hey, I'm fine," but like you were running safety just
right.
to make sure they were cooler. But you were like safety, but doubling up was like, wow, this is pretty cool.
It's yeah, for sure. And it's definitely interesting because the sport is so new, especially here in Hawaii. It's still growing quickly. Um, but as a lifeguard, I can kind of see the risks and the dangers. Um, like what's going on, what's happening. If somebody falls a quarter mile offshore, in my professional opinion, that's a hazard.
Yeah.
And so I was just there to back them up, and I'm sure it helped them and made them feel comfortable to kind of send it a little bit more
Mm,
because,
for sure.
if that option wasn't there, like maybe guys wouldn't be so eager, at first. But
Yeah.
I think,
Well,
like as I was there to back them up and just to kind of give them a confidence boost, um, that they needed to kind of push and progress forward.
for
Everyone was
sure.
like, oh, that was doable.
Yeah.
Um,
Definitely.
yeah, so it was kind of like a symbiotic relationship there, for all of us.
Yeah.
Um,
No, big time. I know. You probably made Kahi a bit too comfortable.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. But I will say a lot of those times when those guys had those big sends, they for sure did it unassisted and crazy, like middle of the day, nobody's around, or kind of like,
Yeah.
you know, I got to give my hats off to those guys. And for anyone that's on those early days, we're so eager to do a Hawaii Kai run, and they would just go for it. And I think a lot of times, like there was peer pressure, but it was almost like, oh, this guy's doing it. Like maybe you couldn't rally up a partner or two because,
Yeah.
if something happens to your partner, it kind of ruins your whole run.
Yeah.
So a lot of times the Hawaii Kai sends were like just guys going solo, and that's pretty nuts.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. It's a long way out to sea. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Um,
Um,
Interestingly though, like I guess, on a like an outrigger or a stand up, you and I probably wouldn't even think twice on doing that run. It's like, worst case we paddle the whole way. And if we don't get a bump the whole way, we know we can paddle the whole distance. I guess the biggest
right.
difference is with the prone guys, like prone paddling on a 4 or 5 foot board is a long slog. And
Can be dangerous too. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, we're just going so slowly. Versus and even like your 6, 7, 8 foot stand-ups is a little bit quicker, but not a lot quicker. So I guess from your downwind experience, like from outrigger paddling, canoe paddling, how was your journey in learning? Because you had the knowledge of what you were looking for, but
Right.
and then you knew how to foil in the surf. How did you marry those two up?
So it was interesting because, and I'm sure you too, say like my style or anybody who's come from a downwinding background, their style would just be efficiency, saving as much energy as it can, going as fast as it can, picking a nice line, point A to point B. There's no extracurricular movement or curvatures in their lines. And I remember, there's a little bit just maybe not seeing it from their perspective yet, but I remember seeing Jack and Scotty and all those guys, and they were ripping, doing downwinds, and they're doing turns and big stuff. And back then I was just thinking like, what are they doing? They're not going as fast as possible. They're wasting. They're slowing down, turning.
Yeah,
You know, but foiling, like I said, it's such a unique sport, and the downwinding part of it is so unique that actually when you do turns, you're creating lift.
yeah,
You're setting yourself up to position yourself nice and high on the bump again. So it can be like energy saving in a way.
yeah,
But like I said, like they're their goggles or their lens of looking at it was like surfers in a skate park and just hitting copings all over the place.
Hmm.
And for me, and I'm sure like for you, like we're just
Yeah.
looking at
Yeah.
the most efficient course possible.
Yeah.
So, just it was amazing. Like, I've never looked at a lens like that. Me, we can't really do those sorts of things on a canoe. Maybe for you guys, like every once in a while you do like a nice little turn, but you're burning off so much speed that's not really worth it. The
Yeah.
whole thing is trying to keep speed, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it was an adjustment, but like, like now, we're all pretty confident in what we're feeling and our ability and our level where now we can look at it with a real playful lens. But, as we transition back towards racing, it's interesting because, we're trying to figure out what's the fastest way possible. How can we conserve the most energy? The different lines we take, and, there's so much, there's other mental parts of it, like, like we've been preparing here, getting ready for races, and just being in a racing mindset with somebody, and you're just blitzing and you're sparring some other guy. It can it can totally mess with your like mental psyche,
Oh, you lose your
and then
rhythm completely.
you lose your rhythm, right? One of my close paddling friends and mentors, he told me, when you're racing somebody, your heart rate gets up and you get out of rhythm, and you're just racing, racing, racing. But if you just focus in on what's right in front of you and you kind of get back into flow and rhythm, you actually be going faster. So it's kind of dealing with that too, right? As we're foiling and we're trying to go for speed, it's, like it is about pumping up and over bumps or trying to go as fast as you can, but also staying in flow, staying in rhythm, staying composed.
Mm.
Um, and it's interesting. I'm looking forward to talking about Molokai with you because I know you're a champion and a veteran, and it's going to be cool to see people's different perspectives, right? Where
Yeah.
um, it's going to be cool to get into that and chat about that.
Yeah. Let's sort of build towards that. Let's
Yeah,
go with like what was your first setup? Like what was your first foil setup? And then had like then your first downwind foil setup, and was it prone? Was it stand up? I know you've progressed into the hand paddles as well. And how's all that
yeah.
looking? So from the beginning, I guess.
I think my first time I paddled out on a prone board, I borrowed a buddy's board. It might have been a 5.0 or 5.2 prone, and we were riding like a dinosaur Nash foil.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember being blown away because it's just getting launched out the back. We're taking off on like, probably 2 meter waves or, like 6 foot faces.
Yeah,
Because
solid.
yeah, you have no idea that that's like a dangerous takeoff, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
On a
Yeah.
foil. We're still learning like this is nothing, and
Yeah.
I think that was the most humbling thing is just pulling off on like 1 foot wave just because, that's how
Scary.
explosive the lips are on
Yes. Yeah.
foils.
Yeah.
Um,
Especially those early
but
foils. Especially those
yeah,
early
the
foils.
surf foils, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think my first setup was a 4.6 Amundsen board, and I had to lift 250 surf.
Hmm.
And that's the biggest one at the time. I remember, my style at first is I wasn't like a super pocket turny guy. I wasn't interested in doing turns at first. I was fascinated with staying up just because for me that was the most exciting thing about foiling was
Yeah.
length of ride and staying up as long as possible and connecting waves. There's
Mm.
nothing like it, right? To me,
Yeah.
that was the most differentiating thing about it. So I was fascinated with that. Probably after 4 months of getting, decent at it. And I remember it's funny is I had some friends telling me, I was falling around, connecting waves, staying up for maybe 2 or 3 waves at a time. But friends would dog me like, "Hey, do something." I was
Yeah.
just I wasn't worried about
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
turns because
Yeah.
I loved just riding waves as long as I could.
Yeah.
Um, and then we had our first go at downwinding. It was terrible. I could see it. I had the vision. Um, the bumps were raging. It was just wild and crazy. But the thing that I wasn't prepared for yet at the time was taking off on a gnarly, burly, like 2.5 meter wave,
Mm.
and just being so just like a washing machine, just a lot of water moving. I think at the time we didn't realize that all the undercurrents and all the water moving underneath just kind of makes you unstable.
Yeah.
So I could see all the bumps going down the coast, and it would kill me because I would want to
Yeah.
chase and ride it, but I couldn't get up. And I was just, I never thought to get towed in. I never thought to get jump off the ski, or never thought to stand up paddle. It was always early on. It was like, okay, we got to get a wave, chip out, and go as long as we could.
Yeah.
Wasn't successful. Our next phase, our next stage was connecting surf break to surf break. So kind of
Mm-hmm.
like spot hopping. And
Yeah.
to us, that was exciting because, it was just lengthening the ride. And then once we started doing that, like I said, we went back to the wind bumps on the Lift 250 surf wing. And I remember going probably 150 yards or 200 yards or meters down the coast connecting bumps, and I was just ecstatic, like, yeah,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
so pumped,
It's the best feeling. Yeah.
best feeling ever. And it's funny because now we're doing runs miles down the coast, but it was so exciting to just go and just be propelled by the ocean like that, and just feel like what we felt in our pastimes of canoe paddling or stand-up paddling.
Yeah.
But for me, is I'm standing up, so I'm actually surfing the ocean. But for you, that might have been cool because what was it for you that was exciting? Like just going faster, the levitation, or
Oh, it was the speed and the ability to turn. Like in the surf, imagine riding a 14-foot board or an 18-foot board
yeah,
versus a 6-foot board. And then
right,
on top of that, you're above the water. So like I always described stand up as surfing the bumps out to sea. And we kind of are. We're gliding. We're like fully longboarding. Whereas now we're surfing the bumps out to sea on the foil, like proper.
right,
Yeah, it's crazy.
right. Yeah, there's nothing like it. I'm so excited for the sport. I still feel like there's so much to grow, and it's exciting to see people all over the world. Like to me, that fascinates me is like when you got guys in Europe in the most uninviting places where they're cold water, lakes,
Yeah.
different coastlines, and it's exciting to see it take off all over the world.
Oh, I couldn't exactly right. That's it. Like there's guys I'm coaching in like lakes in Switzerland who are doing downwinders. Like the lake's only 4 or 5 kilometers like long or wide, and they're waiting for those 30, 40 knot days, and they're sending it down in a lake. Like
Yeah,
you can literally do downwind foiling anywhere. You can voyage anywhere.
anywhere.
Yeah.
To me, that's the most exciting, the most amazing, and the most convincing part, that we're doing the best. Water sport, in my opinion. It's tricky because the learning curve is so intense and it's so elite. But I have a strong belief that we are involved in the most fascinating water sport there is, ocean sport.
Yeah, but I guess on that, it being difficult, downwind, any sport is difficult. Like stand-up paddling downwind is hard because the balance.
Right.
Paddling a canoe downwind is hard because everything there's just more energy going on. It's it's difficult. Then there's a learning process, and I guess people have to understand that too. Like voyaging down or along a coastline or along a lake or whatever it is, you need to understand the bumps around you, and there's that level of I need to be able to perfect my craft, and then I need to perfect my craft in the downwind conditions, and that's something that a lot of people, obviously foiling's harder than most other things, but it's to perfect your craft and then perfect it in downwind. They're kind of different sports altogether. Like surf foiling to downwind foiling, you're reading it very differently, and I guess you described it like you were paddling into waves to start with, and then going 200-300 yards down the coast, and then so what was the next progression? I love hearing how people learnt and what equipment they were using. So I'm gonna
right.
So when did you go to the full
SUP.
Kaiko's run? No, it's like, when did you start doing the full, like, what equipment were you only doing the Kaiko's runs?
Right. So we started stomping out Kaiko's runs when the high aspect line started coming out. I don't think the time we were foiling, other than Go Foil, and I think Signature had the Albatross out, but most of us were riding lifts. And I think as soon as they dropped their high aspect line, we all got the 170s. I was riding the high aspect 200 at first, and it was a little bit of an adjustment, like learning it in the surf. But I just remember feeling the glide and how efficient these wings were, and just being like, this is a no brainer. Like,
Yeah,
we're gonna for sure stomp out these runs on these things.
yeah,
Um, and I think there was like less than 5 on the island, but like, so we were like borrowing each other's gear. Like, hey man, can I go on the run? Let me borrow your setup real quick. Or like,
yeah,
you know, um, it was just exciting because now like we were able to make it a half mile down the coast, a mile down the going halfway. So from Black Point to Lighthouse, and
yeah,
just being pumped.
yeah,
And so it's been, yeah. So once we started doing the runs, it was cool because we started putting together a group chat of guys, and I think at the time it was maybe like 4 of us, me, Jack, Adam, Scotty, and this kid Drew, or 5 of us. And it was cool. We were like jonesing to go because it was this brand new um brand new sport just budding on Oahu. And we would go, and like, I remember coming in, and all the different foilers or even surfers would just kind of yell out to us like, "Hey, where'd you guys come from?"
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, and it
yeah.
was it was cool. Like, we were like all pumped, like, "We just came from Caicos," and
Yeah,
like, it was cool because like, the sport was starting to rapidly go. Guys would start coming with us, but it was kind of iffy because obviously you don't want to feel responsible for people like, oh, where did they go down, or
yeah,
oh, I don't know if they're ready, or this
yeah,
or that. But it was cool. We started slowly growing our group, and it was cool. It was a nice community. Guys were stoked, and we were learning from each other, um, and just getting so pumped for each other,
yeah,
that we were doing this run. And slowly, like a truck full of 3, 4 guys, or a a group chat of 5 guys was growing to 10, and it was growing from 1 truck to 2 trucks.
yeah.
And then now, 4 years later, on a windy day, you can drive up and down Diamond Head, and at some point during the day, you'll see a little clump of guys going, or you'll see like just truckloads of guys going, and we can't even keep up with just the community. It's so excited, and it's growing, and it's growing, and it's growing. But it's cool because it's simultaneously, like, in my opinion, it's cool. Like, the prone foiling is a good step in the door. Just the whole sport. But eventually, I hope that people will graduate and discover new methods of popping up, whether
Yeah,
it's with an SUP paddle or a hand paddle,
yeah,
because that's what it's really about, is just getting more chunk off your bite. And instead of voyaging for 10 minutes at a time, you can do it for 20, 30 minutes at a time, or maybe even longer.
yeah, for sure.
What you guys are doing is crazy. I'm jealous of you guys because you guys have
It's,
good coastline where you can get
yeah, we got a big
50
island. Yeah.
yeah, you got a big island.
Yeah,
um but yeah, hopefully for us, like, that's what it is. And we've seen it kind of grow, where like there was like a first batch of people who got into SUP, and then there was a second batch, third batch. And it's cool because now we're kind of trying to bring everybody up and grow the sport. But it's also just fun to get out there with as much buddies as you can.
oh, for sure.
And it's fun to enjoy it together.
Yeah,
And
for
so
sure.
that's what's cool.
Oh,
I remember, when you launched your podcast, it was like you didn't have any buddies, and it was like you're trying to convince everybody, but it's just
yeah.
it takes a while to grow. But once the snowball starts going, it starts
Yeah.
growing.
Yeah. And then all their mates are looking at what they're doing and just like, oh, what are you doing? How are you doing that? And what equipment are you using? And it fully snowballs. A few things I've picked up on, like, not just you, but also Kahi, you've said before, but like how the high aspect foils really opened up the
Right.
sort of the Kaiko's run for you guys, just because the extra glide you're getting. What I found, well, I guess at the time, the higher aspect foils that came out, were probably harder to get up than the lower aspect foils in terms of the paddling, like the chip in.
Mm.
Like you couldn't actually like catch a bump as easy on a higher aspect foil as what you can on a lower aspect foil. So just the paddle
Right.
up was harder. So I remember when I was sat in the
Yeah.
cutting, I'm like, he was saying like, if you don't have a high aspect, you're not coming for the prone. And you know, that was the rule. It was like, man, you got to go back, get a high aspect, come back next time. But I
Right.
think is which
Right.
makes total sense for prone because if you're catching a wave, the energy is there that you can sort of get up on anything. So the smaller foil makes a lot of sense. And then with the stand up, which I'm gonna get you to go on more now, like how is your stand up journey and like the chip in, and obviously there's now bigger
Mhm.
high aspect foils than when they first came out. But how did that all go? The
Right.
equipment for SUP and prone.
So, I thought I was going to be um, a prone Voyager downwind foiler forever. I was skeptical in the back of my head, like, there's no way these big stand-up boards are faster. Like, why would you want to be going around on a big board, just lugging it around? And I remember reflecting back. The reason was, I think when you start on a prone board, if you're a beginner, you start off on a big like 410 or 50 board, and once you get up on it, it's so dull, it's so heavy, and it just bogs around.
Mm-hmm.
And then you eventually graduate and go smaller and smaller, and you're learning that it gets more efficient and it gets lighter. It's easier to pump. But I think that's just basically how poor the design of boards were back then.
Yeah.
So like I said, in the back of my head, I'm like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to dumb or numb the sensation of voyaging down. So I was pretty hard headed. I was stubborn for a while to get into it. But so like, yeah, Nick Apuli and Jack Ho, they're having so much fun, and I was skeptical. I was late to the party. Um, I had planned a family vacation to go check out the gorge. A lot of the guys from Hawaii were starting to explore and go up there. Jack was going, Eric Sturman and Aaron Evelyn were heading up there. And I would just see the clips of it. And I was just like, this is amazing. My buddy Christian Bradley as well. Um, but I'd always, in the back of my head, thought like, what am I going to do? Am I going to dock start? Am I going to
Yeah.
rock start? How am I going to get up? I was like,
Yeah.
it was like last resort was, I'm gonna have to learn this stand-up paddle thing and just kind of suffer for a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe about 2 weeks out, maybe about like a month out from the trip, I got to myself a Dave Kalama 6.0 by 20 and 78-liter board. I'm about 180 pounds, so that might be, was that 70 kilos? I'm not
No, I think that's
entirely
close to
sure.
me. It's like 80 kilos, similar to me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so this board was tiny, but it was big, right? Because we're riding 4-foot boards,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I was putting on the back burner because I was drawing from my knowledge of paddling. That I know which bump to choose. I know which bump to chase, and we're gonna chase the back of it and this and that. And I put it off, and maybe about 2 weeks before my trip, I'm like, okay, let me get out there and start trying, see if I could get up.
Yeah.
I didn't even go to the surf lineup. I didn't even paddle in flat water. My first session, okay, I borrowed Travis Grant. You know Travis?
Yeah. Yeah.
Travis Grant. So he's a good paddling mate of mine. We did a couple of channels together in the 6-man canoe.
Yeah.
But big Aussie champ, stand-up paddler guy. He had a subfoil. And he kills me because I know he's such a great water athlete and a stand-up athlete. And he has a board and has foils, and he doesn't go. And it
Come on,
kills me
Trav.
because,
Yeah.
come on, Trav.
Yeah.
Trav, I miss. But
Yeah.
he's too busy, right? He's
Yeah.
got families, kids, and he's kind of still pursuing the canoe paddling thing. So
Yeah.
for him, it's backward. But anyways, I borrowed his board. I go straight to Kaiko's. I jump off the rocks, and I try to stand up on this board, and I'm falling. I'm not even standing on the board for more than 3 seconds.
Yeah.
I go to take a stroke, and I do a full 180, and I'm like, I'm just like, oh my gosh, like this is impossible. And then the thing was like a bathtub. Had no glide. I don't know the dims, but it was like an NSP board
Yeah.
that had just like atrocious contours on the bottom that was just making it super sticky.
Yeah.
And there was no way, and from my paddling background, I knew that there was no way that I would generate the speed to catch a bump.
Yeah.
And so after 15 minutes of just complete failure, I was like, okay, I'll catch a wave. I couldn't catch a wave. I couldn't stand up on the board. I couldn't generate the speed to catch a wave or match the speed of a wave to get up on foil. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna take off on my belly with the paddle under my chest
Yeah.
and try and catch a wave. Try to catch a wave. I wasn't used to it. My feet were in the wrong spot. I was just, if you look at my Garmin, it was like the gnarliest bloodbath of like a spaghetti line. It was just
Yeah.
and it took me 2.5 hours to go 3 miles down the coast. It took me like I just had like I jumped in at Kaiko's. I got dropped off by my dad, and I was committed. I was gonna finish at one point, but yeah, after probably another hour 15 in the lineup, just failing and just getting so frustrated because I couldn't catch a wave. I just started making my way down the coast just on my belly,
Yeah.
just to make kind of forward progress.
Yeah.
And then I remember probably 3/4 down the coast towards the finish, I would paddle like 5 to 10 strokes up. And that was like, okay, this is like a huge win for me that I could
Pressing.
just go,
Yeah.
yeah,
Learning.
just go
Yeah.
straight. Learning, baby.
Yeah.
But that was my first experience. And I remember before I had went out, I had sent a text to the boys, like all stoked, like, yeah, like I'm going on the sup, let's go. And then I sent them a video as soon as I came in, 2.5 hours later of disaster. And it's funny, I put on a Voyager sticker because I was all pumped. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna hook up Trav with a Voyager sticker and this and that, and be all pumped, like this is new, this is exciting. And I remember coming in, I just being so pissed off, disappointed, and depressed that I ripped the sticker off of the stand-up board. I was like, hey boys, this doesn't belong here. Like
Yeah.
and just being just destroyed. Like
Yeah.
I'm never doing this again,
Yeah.
two
Yeah.
and a half hours. And
Oof.
then like that run takes us like 8 to 10 minutes,
Yeah. That's
and it was
heavy.
just complete shocker, hero to zero,
Yeah.
And then but I after a couple of days of recovery, just of my ego and my body, I still had that trip planned for the gorge. And I had a board. I was like, oh yeah, well, I might as well use this thing.
Here we go.
I would
Yeah.
go out to I would go out to Waikiki and like try and paddle on the board, stay up if I could stay up. But I didn't realize too that board is tiny for the time, 6.0, 78-liter board, and
Yeah.
it
That's
just
little.
I would sink this thing.
Mm.
But just eventually, just having the discipline to just take it in stages. Like, okay, I should be able to stand up. I should be able to paddle, maybe switch sides or catch waves. And eventually, I was okay. I can catch waves in the surf. I'm ready for the gorge. I go over to the gorge, all pumped. I meet up with the guy from Big Winds. Get a Kalama board. I'm all pumped, all stoked. I show up. There's like a whole bunch of local wingers and foil guys, but they're like 67 years old, and I'm all pumped. I'm all unloading my gear. I'm all stoked. Like, yeah, guys, I'm from Hawaii. Like, yeah. You guys heard of Voyager Foil? Blah blah blah. Like, all
Yeah.
like flexing my chest. Like, yeah, this is cool. Like, I do this all the time. I'm there with my family, my kids, and I paddle out, and I had no idea that like now, like you think you can do it. You go out in the bumps, and like the water's moving, and I couldn't even stand on my board. I was falling. I was like, it was funny because as I paddle out, all those locals at the gorge, like all these 67-year-old guys are like, hey guys, we got a real Hawaiian here. Let's check him out. And like I'm paddling out. And like after 45 minutes of being stuck in the same spot, falling and like not even getting close. I had a couple slapper moments where I was like, I got close. I was but I couldn't balance.
Yeah.
And the shame because I come back in. And then like my kids are like, like, Dad, I thought you knew how to foil. Like, that was probably their first time, like, seeing me foil.
Yeah.
And then like my wife was telling me like, yeah, those guys after 10 minutes are like does he need help? Does he know what he's doing out there? And I was just so ashamed because I was, I couldn't do it. And, I'd seen some of these guys at the gorge and, like no offense, but they look wonky. They look goofy. They're doing it in full suits. They don't look like water people at all. They're doing it in booties and shoes. And like,
Yeah.
I'm also thinking like, I got this,
Yeah. Yeah.
shattered,
Yeah.
freaking shattered.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I didn't
How's the
even get to
ego?
foil the
How's the
board.
ego after that? It's yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Now I wanted to quit. I was like, I got this board. I wasted all this money on this board. I come to the mecca of Downwind. I can't even get up. Like,
Mm.
I didn't even get the foil. Like me and my buddy were just doing dock starts like in the bay or where it was flat, and
Yeah.
I was just bummed because I didn't even get any riding time.
Yeah. Well, the other
I come
thing I
back to
guess
Hawaii.
worth mentioning, like to make you feel a little bit better, is the salt water to the fresh water. Like I find I need more volume in fresh water than I do in
Mhm.
salt water. So like if you're on a 78-liter board, it's already tiny in like the ocean. You go 78 liter
Yeah.
to the river, like freshwater river, and that's like sinker, full sinker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd actually borrowed a different board. I think it was like I borrowed a 6.0 or 6.1 or 6.2 Kalama. And those are his super egg wide boards that he had at the time. It
Yeah.
was maybe
The
like 6.1,
E3s.
6.2 by
Yeah.
23 wide.
Yeah.
So like that wasn't even an excuse. I just sucked. But yeah, I remember coming back home and I was just, pretty defeated, but still kind of curious. I don't know, why I didn't just give up and just commit back to the prone, but came back on my board, got a little bit more acclimated, went out for my first Keiko's run, bit I got up, and I was like just like pumped.
Mhm.
And then, the next session I figured out, okay, I'm gonna start up at China Walls and we're gonna go 8 miles. And whatever. If I can't get up, I'm gonna get great practice. I have 8
Yeah.
miles or what would that be, 15K, 16K
Yeah.
of just pop-up practice. But it's crazy because it was so critical and it was so like there was so much anxiety and pressure because I would stand up on the board and I would just be spending 95% of my energy and effort balancing that if I didn't pop up or get a bump in like 10, 15 seconds, I'd have to sit down and just like just fully breathe and regather myself. It was pathetic,
Yeah.
but I ended up popping up and then it was pressure because it's like there's no guarantees if I fall, I'm gonna pop up again. So I better stay up.
Yeah.
And so eventually got better. And we had had my buddy Moses, who was my sparring partner at the time. We was like going with each other, and it was like always a race of who could pop up, and it was almost like every man for themselves. I remember
Once
one
you're up.
time.
Yeah.
I mean, like in canoe paddling, we go on runs, and if it's big and you're going with a buddy who's his first time, like oh yeah, we'll stop halfway and kind of we'll regroup, we'll gather. I make sure that you don't flip or you're not having trouble.
Yeah.
None of that.
You're not stopping. If you're up, you're going the whole way. Yeah.
Exactly. There's no way I'm stopping. Like I can't. I put myself in danger.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember one time I went with him. His dad dropped us off. And we go. I come in. I have a great run. My best run at the time because we're still climbing that curve, and I had popped up pretty quick and made it the whole way, so I was pumped. And Moses, my buddy, was just learning at the time, and it was his first run. He could pop up a little bit, but not super certain.
Yeah.
And it took him a while. And I came in, and his dad came in, and we were just kind of dry, showered off, and kind of like waiting for Moses. And after 30 minutes, his dad just kind of like flipped out on me. He's like, "Hey, where's my son?" And was like angry at me because like I hadn't stopped and waited for him.
Yeah.
And it was like it almost got to like I thought I was gonna get beat up,
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
his father was being super protective and like it was crazy. But we ended up looking for Moses, and he was still just paddling down the coast, not on foil, just making his way slowly down the coast. And it was just, my heart sank because I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta like find him. I was like worried for him,
Yeah.
but I was also like worried that like his dad was gonna beat me up. You know, it was
Yeah,
like
yeah. Double
I
trouble.
was responsible. Yeah, I was responsible for like waiting for him. But it, you know, like I think a lot of people, they don't know that like, hey man, it's every man for themselves. I can't come down. You know, I gotta stay up, and you know, I
Yeah.
can't put myself in jeopardy too. You
Yeah.
know.
It's a really tricky one. That's probably worth let's elaborate on that. Like looking back, would you have changed anything? Or I guess like because I have the same dilemma. Like when I'm going with crew that are still learning, I'm like, well, look, I'm going and I can wait for you out in the ocean, but I'm gonna get cold eventually and I gotta go. And it's
Yeah.
probably safer for me to be on land looking for you than sitting out in the ocean waiting for you.
Right.
You know
Right.
what I mean? Like it's a tricky one for sure.
It's a tricky
Communication
one.
is key.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, nowadays we just kind of tell people to stomp out as much of the shorter, smaller runs as they can, and once they're comfortable, then you start stretching out to
Yeah,
do longer runs,
for sure.
rather than just jumping off the deep end.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
Oh
so
yeah.
but it's funny because like I mean, we were all the guinea pigs at the moment. Just we we had to learn these things,
Yeah, yeah.
and and then hopefully applying it to the second, third, fourth batch of guys coming up, we can give them advice that'll help them and help accelerate their journey for voyaging.
Yeah. I think it's really important that when you're going downwind foiling with people, that you go with someone a really similar level to you. Like
Yeah.
like obviously sounded
Yeah.
like you were a bit more advanced than your buddy Moses. So
Yeah.
that was probably the biggest problem. You made it in one run and he was not. So like the time difference was huge, you know. So
Yeah.
whereas if you're both
Yeah.
learning, yeah, if you're learning at the same level and you're sort of both up and going, then even if you're even if you get one really good run, you're probably not making the entire run, you know, on your second or third go. That like, and you kind of figure it out. But having a friend or partner that's similar level is so important. I feel
It's
like
key.
key.
Yeah, it's definitely key. Um, but yeah, like I said, that's all stuff that we were just learning and ironing out as we're going. But yeah, like I said, like now, like you've got a great coaching platform and program, or we've done it enough where now we can give
Yeah, look, the
advice to new
advice.
people.
Yeah, there's more
Yeah.
and more people doing it, and like I don't like my coaching isn't for everyone. Some people like to just figure it out themselves, and other people want to have a few
Right.
tips and pointers and look at video and help them out a little bit that way. It's not for everyone,
Yeah,
and like it's not supposed to be for everyone.
people learn differently.
Yeah,
Yeah, people
exactly.
learn differently, and maybe some tips you gave will help somebody, but it might not help the other. Or
Yeah,
it's cool because I've actually had some of my buddies come from paddling, and they didn't have any surfing background.
yeah,
So like, I could tell them something and they'll understand it. Whereas, I've gone out with some other friends and they're trying to attack the bump. I'm like, you literally have to be like, okay, go now.
yeah, yeah,
It's like
yeah,
they have no they have no idea what they're looking at, and
yeah.
it's hard to explain. But
So hard. Yeah,
everyone learns differently.
everyone
Yeah.
learns different, and it's like yeah, like a lot of people locally, like they don't sign up for my online coaching, but I go do sessions with them, like in the water. I'm literally I did a session up over in Western Australia with a guy, and he's part of my coaching stuff too. But we went over to Exmouth, and I was behind him filming the entire run, telling him, go left now, go right now, wait, go now. And then like just like it's like I was
Right.
literally like his eyes, like I was his like telling him, I was like steering him, like, okay, this way and then this way. And like he learned so much
Yeah.
from that because he understood what he has to do once he's up. And having a friend that
Yeah.
is better than you and is willing to sort of like I used a much slower foil than I would normally that day. And we literally had two of his boards and I went out in his backup board and we swapped a couple times and like so we were the same speed. And it was actually so
Right.
fun. Like seeing him, the longest run he'd ever done before was like 10 minutes
Yeah.
and he was up for like 45 minutes. Like we did like a 20, 30K run. Like it was so sick. So like having a friend that can direct or guide you it's key. It is gonna,
It's key.
yeah, it's gonna be big. And having someone close is just as good because you can learn off each other. So that,
Right.
yeah,
And
that's
then it's also like when I'm sure with you and oh, can you see me? Sorry,
yeah,
I had a
gotcha.
call from you.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's cool because I feel like too it's exciting for like in your position or in my position when you're helping people and you seeing people learn. It's exciting. You're stoked
best.
for them. You're genuinely so pumped and excited, and you're seeing the sport grow. You're seeing people get better. it's all worth it, you know, and
Oh yeah,
it's cool to see the whole level come up, you know.
yeah, big time, big time. Yeah, it's so rewarding, and I'm lucky to do it as a job, but it's something I pinch myself all the time. It's like, how good is this? Like, I get to
Yeah.
teach people to do this stuff, and yeah, very lucky. But I want to go into the prone paddling. So you nailed this up, and was that on the small board too? Were you on the same board, same foil?
I, yeah, so I started on my 60 Kalama. We started with the lift 170, actually the lift 200 high aspect, just so we can kind of
Yeah, yeah,
get more looks at popping up and slapping. And then eventually we downsized to the
yeah,
170. And, and then the 120 came out, and we wanted to go out on the 120, but we didn't have enough board, or we couldn't generate enough speed.
yeah,
And that was when Dave came out with the Barracuda,
yeah,
and we took out the Barracuda, and I was just blown away at how uh, quick you could bring it up to plane. And for us, that was everything. Was like, okay, like, it was nice to be on the 170, and it was cruisy, and it was good size wing, but you want to go faster, you want to go longer, and just hit these higher speeds and
yeah,
attack different sections.
yeah,
And so that's what it was. We basically got the Barracuda just because we could get up on the 120 or get up
yeah,
in poor conditions.
yeah,
And that was exciting for us. At first it's like it took a while to have the idea of riding a longer board grow on you, because coming from a prone, we're still very skeptical that a bigger board is going to ride better.
yeah,
So you kind of try to keep your board down. Like, that's why I wanted the 6.0 at 78 liters.
yeah.
But then, you learn that, okay, like, maybe I can just improve my technique, but my technique still sucks, but I'm able to pop up easily. I rely on my experience in the water of chasing and getting the right ones. Eventually,
Yeah.
I do have to improve. But like, I hope I didn't like hide it all my abilities in the Barracuda, because it paddles so well, just having a longer board. Um, but yeah, so we downsized. And then I remember, you know, um, when I ordered my first Barracuda, Dave sent me a pair of hand paddles. I put those things in the corner. I hung it up. I forgot about it. It was collecting dust. I had no interest in it,
Yeah.
just because I was still excited and on the growth learning curve with the SUP paddle,
Yeah.
and was getting better at it. So I had no desire to do it at all. Um, it just so happened, like we're so used to going with big groups of guys, but like nobody was really, um, like curious. They were still skeptical about the sup. So, I hadn't proned with my boys in forever, on the runs. Like all the boys, you like seeing the boys, and that's another big part of the good times and the fascination, is just the community and the friendships you develop. And so
Oh yeah.
I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm gonna take the Barracuda. I'm gonna try these hand paddles out. I'll jump in with you guys at Keiko's, and I'll see if I could get up. And my first session, I was blown away, um, because I was able to attack a bump. I wasn't missing bumps. I didn't have any balance issues.
Yep.
The hand paddles work really well. Um, and like every time I would go and paddle for a bump and attack a bump, I would get on it. The only thing that I was dealing with, or the learning curve that I had to kind of figure out, was when do I stand up, how do I stand up, and how do I get this thing off the water. But probably within the first 10 minutes, I had gotten up. I got a nice good bump, boom, 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 stood up on the board and popped it up. And I was like, my life flashed before me, because it was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
just to, like, there's no way, like, I mean, because how hard it is.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's getting up in their first 10 minutes on an SUP board on their
No.
very first go at
No.
it. So I was stoked. I was excited. Um, I was excited because it became more accessible to people,
Yeah.
because not everyone, so a lot of people are still hanging on to the skepticism in the back of their minds that sups are slower, sups are like not as cool, or, there's
Yeah.
guys who are like, like prone forever.
Yeah.
But, this idea of now catching a bump with your hands and on your knees or on your belly, it could now reach out to a whole nother crop of people.
Oh, for sure.
Um,
It's I would totally agree with you. So what foil were you on for that run? And like were the conditions good?
the conditions were mediocre for our standards. It
Yeah.
was probably maybe the bumps were maybe knee high or
Yep.
so. Um, I was on the Cabrinha 1050 at the time.
Yep.
Um, so it has good low end and it has good pop and lift.
Yeah. Would you have
Um,
been sup downwind foiling that one? Like the Cabrera, or would you have been a smaller version of it?
yeah, no, I was using both. Like
Yeah.
I use the 1050 for smaller days, and I would use the 800 or 850 for bigger days.
Gotcha. Yeah,
I
yeah.
kind of leaned I kind of lean towards the 1050 or the 850, just a little bit of a bigger wing, just
Yep.
because, like I said, maybe the last 3 months, I've been really trying to improve my technique of paddling up. Just because,
Yep.
like I said, I'm like a full lazy man,
Yeah, yeah.
rely on the bump
Yeah. Waiting for
technique
the
guy.
perfect bump. Yeah.
Yeah,
Patient.
sometimes just be so patient paddling up. Like I'd wait 3, 4 minutes and boom, there's my bump and I'm up.
Yeah.
Whereas like, some of my friends, they pop up and they get a little push and they just start yanking their hearts out and boom, they pop up. Whereas
Yeah.
like I was like, I'm not gonna spend that much energy on it.
Yeah. It's the
It's been a
efficiency.
good,
Yeah.
yeah, it's been it's been good learning and applying that, and
Yeah.
getting better. But
Yeah.
yeah, I was riding the 1050 at the time.
Awesome. Yeah. The prone thing, I totally agree with you. I think more people should learn that way. And it's a
Safer,
quicker learning
easier.
curve as long as the bumps are good. It's as you said, the balance, the ability to have good paddle technique. Like with the hands, it just sort of happens. Whereas with the paddle, it's like an extension of the body. The hardest thing you sort of nailed it is just you're getting the glide, but you're just working out when to pop up to your feet. And when you can pop
Right.
up, once you're up, it's like now you're doing it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, you're doing it. You're stoked, and it's cool. It's yeah, like I said, I feel like it's safer, because it maybe, like when you first started going out there on the stand-up paddle, you're coming with an experience level that's unfamiliar. So like you still get like butterflies, like when you're learning, like, ooh, I don't know if I could pop up, like, ooh,
Yeah,
I guess you could always get down on your belly and paddle in back to shore if you can't pop up, but
yeah,
it almost feels like there's an attitude of like, I got nothing to lose. I'm on hand paddles, whatever. If anything, I'll go catch a wave.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. You don't
so
have to
it's
do
a
something with the paddle, like the paddle itself, because like you said, that
right.
first run you had it under your chest. It's just a bit like it's hard to manage it without,
Yeah.
it's
I Yeah, going back to that session, it was like I was so close to just ditching my paddle and just
yeah,
like fuck, like getting rid of it
yeah,
so I could just continue on my run. But I was like, I gotta hold on to this paddle, and
yeah,
yeah, it was hard taking off on your belly, putting your hands on the board and standing up, but then
yeah,
your paddle would get flown behind, and you'd be like, I gotta come off a foil and go get my paddle.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but the hand paddle's way, it's cool.
How did you
Um,
find? I know a lot of people ask, but how did you find the pop up like on the board with the hand paddles?
um, I think a lot of people are curious about it because they can't grab the rails and you got to have like a flat hand pop up. Some people, they're different. They like the control of grabbing the rails, especially in a wild takeoff. But, um, you know, I I think I mean, I'm sure you've done it a few times, or I don't know how much you've done, but I've seen videos of you on it, and to me, it's just about standing up at the right time, and you have to have the right bump that has a long enough runway. You want to be standing up on the top of the bump and not when you're like kind of like middle or towards the bottom of the trough after you've dropped in. But like I didn't think it was a big issue standing up and using your hands. And then, I had like a belt and I had a carabiner and I would just clip it in. And that was my first thing, is like, oh, it feels nice not to hold a paddle anymore. Um, because I remember when I was stand up being I still don't, I'm, like trying to modify my technique and see if I could use a paddle, when I'm foiling, downwind, just to get the extra speed or just to carry me to the next bump. But I normally just sling it around my back and I'm like, I like being hands-free and just riding, and it helps me focus in on the bump and staying efficient. And I remember, in the early days when I didn't have that sling technique, I'd be like on a run and be like, oh, my hands are so tired because I'd be gripping,
Yeah.
like gripping the paddle so hard. And I'd be
Yeah.
like, what? I'd be like tripping out.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, the hand paddles, it was cool because like it felt nice. I'd clip it back in and it was just nice and hands-free, and it was cool. It was exciting. And yeah, like I said, I was more excited that a new and larger crop of people could be interested, and it was more attainable for them to get
Yeah.
into it.
It's been
There's
so
there's
cool. Yeah. Yeah,
yeah, there's
pros
pros and
and cons.
cons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to go
It's
through
just
those?
yeah,
What do you feel like the pros and cons of each are?
obviously I think the hand paddle curve is a lot easier. Um, but it's gonna take maybe a little bit more bump knowledge of being when to go, when to stand up. It's not hard, but it is something you're gonna have to learn. And just like I said, maybe it'll take more experience for like guys like you and me who we come from that background, so we know what to chase after and what to go after. Um, Also, when you're standing up and your hands are on the board, you're kind of dead in the water, meaning you're not adding or contributing any energy to continue helping you pop up. Whereas
Yeah.
if you have a paddle, as you're like kind of like slapping water or just kind of like starting to pop up, but you're still in that kind of low energy, like low end phase, couple more strokes paddling and boom, you're up, So it's more forgiving in that sense. But vice versa, it's takes weeks. It takes
Yeah. It's a long journey to get
time.
there. Yeah.
It's a long journey to get there, but I think it's both have their pros and cons. But like I always tell people too, it's like, man, like we had to learn on these gnarly like surf foils. So
Yeah.
like perhaps maybe our technique of pumping when we got on to high aspects, it was easy, it was butter.
Yeah.
So like we're people who they learn on high aspects, like maybe they don't have the fine intricacies and the feeling of what you're feeling, how much lift you have, how much speed you have, how much, like pump or how much
Yeah.
cardio you have.
I think it's also
So
like
there's
trusting the low end, like trusting the low end of the foil. You
right,
trust that, and you kind of you won't pump too early, and you
right, right.
go wide.
There's such a yeah, like such a finesse part about that. Like, and I'm sure because you're a high level downwinder, is if you're on a bump and you pump at too early or you pump too late, it throws off your whole rhythm and your whole flow. Um, and the whole positioning on the bump, right?
Yeah.
But it's those little intricate feelings that you maybe can't explain to a beginner,
Yeah.
but like say like someone like you would know or I would know, it's just it makes a difference. And that's what's cool about when we get into racing and over these long races, Molokai 32 miles, all these little things do count, and they'll add up.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's go into that now. So like you've done Molokai to Oahu a number of times on the outrigger and it's like solo and six man, yeah?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. How many
um
times have you done it? The
i
channel.
I remember, so six man I did it 10 years in a row. So that's 10 crossings there, maybe another four of practice crossings with the team and the club,
Yeah.
and probably one man I did the solo 5 times,
Yeah.
and then the OC1 relay, so the tag team partner, probably like another 8 times,
Yeah.
and then a handful of practice runs in between that.
Yeah.
So I
You know the channel.
I lost.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you know
yeah.
the channel. Yeah.
You know the channel, but you don't know the channel because every time it's
Oh,
it's so vast and it's so
that's
different.
well, that's an experienced man talking. You know the channel, but you know that you don't know it because you know it so well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It is different every time.
Every time.
How do you see like have you foiled the channel?
I I have not. The only channel crossing that we've done so far is the Maui to Molokai,
Yeah.
and that was fun. That was amazing. But it's still very very different from the Molokai to Oahu. the Pilolo channel is right behind your back. It's giant bumps, and it's fun, and it's very corduroy and just very
Great.
easy to read. Whereas, the Kaiwi channel, Molokai to Oahu, it gets a little bit more technical with the direction of bumps, the wind that you have, the swell. When you get closer to Oahu, the backwash, the course strategy, there's so much things to think about. And even for me, as confident as I am in foiling, I'm still very kind of nervous about it, because I know how daunting the channel can be.
Yeah. Yeah. And the biggest
Yeah.
thing I think for me thinking about foiling the channel is the change in conditions. Like it
Hmm.
is like 4 or 5 different faces throughout
Yeah.
the entire channel. And that's, you know, that's on a good day. It
Yeah.
changes.
That's on a good.
Yeah.
It could be north. It could be flat. It could be ripping trades. It's just, yeah. It could be low tide. It could be high tide, and you just have these wild sections.
Yeah.
Like, I'm intimidated by it still. I've
Yeah.
crossed it, 20 plus times, and I'm still very intimidated. I can't imagine how these people feel or they haven't done it. I don't want to scare anybody because,
Yeah.
we want it's
Yeah.
it's all going to be great learning. Like, I was talking to a buddy of mine, Dave Louie. He's like a very veteran in canoe paddling as well, and he said, like, like, maybe this year is just a learning year. Like,
Yeah.
don't be so worried about doing well, performing well. Obviously, we want to do our best, but it's really like sticking your foot in the water and testing the temperature of the water and just seeing
100%. Yeah.
what's possible. Just kind of like, like learning and figuring out what you're capable of and what the channel's capable of.
Yeah. Because the distance for foiling compared to outrigger or stand up or prone or ski, it's a lot less of a distance foiling
Yeah.
it. 52 Ks.
Yeah.
Like if that was like a perfect downwind run, 52 kilometers, you're probably doing that in 2 hours. Like,
Yeah.
that's in an ideal world, wind at your back, good conditions. But for Molokai, the start kind of flat. It's offshore winds. It's like
Yeah.
it's flat at the
We
start.
would ride the boat wake for the first 10 minutes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
you know, because that's the best bump that's available for the
yeah,
first 10 minutes, and then it starts opening up, but it's still very small.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I
And
remember,
then
to
yeah,
me, that was the most exciting part. Is just all that chop when all the escrow boat riders are trying to find their paddlers,
yeah,
and it was just create like this crazy sea of boat wake.
mm,
But thinking about it on the foil, like that'll give us wobbles.
yeah, yeah,
um, it's
yeah,
gonna be interesting.
yeah. And then the
Um,
middle, the middle can be like, I guess the first half of the middle, I feel like can be really good, whereas,
yeah, 100%.
but it just gets
Yeah,
worse and you just get worse and worse until it's a headwind. Kind of is how I explain it to
it's
some
a
crew.
it's yeah, it's brutal because the channel, and the closer you get to Oahu, it gets more challenging. You get backwash, you get, yeah, like maybe a headwind, you get bumps that are maybe harder to read because it's just now you're going over different shallow parts of the channel, and unfortunately your gas tank is going down, so
Yeah,
you're not going to have the energy. And so I was talking to some buddies of mine who are paddlers, so they kind of understand, and you would understand because you guys are maniacs crossing the channels and subs. Because for us on the canoe paddle or the OC1s, it would take us maybe 3.5 to 4 hours. So when you develop your training program, you're training to hit the wall at 3 hours, right? That's when your body fails. And it was cool because it was evident, because if you did your homework, you did your training, you would meet the wall, hit the wall, but climb through, punch through. But people who maybe didn't put in enough training, they would cramp, they would fail, they could just struggle. So what's fascinating to me is, like you mentioned earlier, our body's still going through the same amount of duress in the fact that we're traveling 32 miles, but we're not like necessarily hitting like the time frame of like an endurance,
Mm.
like we're hitting the wall, you know.
Yeah.
So it's like it's interesting because I feel like our bodies are capable of foiling for 2 hours, but it's just interesting to see how much strain our body will actually go through, and how to
Yeah.
train for that. It's just
Yeah.
it's different. We're all trying to brainstorm and figure a way out.
Yeah. It's I guess I describe Molokai to Oahu not as a downwind race, but as an ocean race.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas Maui to Molokai, like the Pailolo, that's a downwind race. That's
Oh, 100.
and yeah, so it's like um I feel like for those that are doing Molokai or aspire to do Molokai, don't just do downwinders because the wind is good. Do ocean paddles or ocean voyages, I guess, because
Yeah.
it's not a
The
true downwind
the
down the
bumps
barrel.
are the bumps the bumps are so different too, right? Like, you know, um, training on our one mans and all those years and reading or just going on Hawaii Kai runs. It is so much different to be out there in the channel because there's so much space. The way that you read it is different, and it comes at a different angle. So a lot of times we would have to, like train in particular waters to kind of simulate and practice that angle.
Yeah,
But it's still like incomparable to like what um when you're out in the channel and you face these bumps, and it's so different.
yeah,
um you can try your best to prepare, but usually the best way to learn is just doing the race year after year after year.
yeah,
And
yeah. It's like you do
you
your
know
apprenticeship. Yeah,
right,
yeah.
right.
It's a
There's no shortcuts, no
no,
shortcuts at all.
no, no. But you definitely like you mentioned, like if you train for it and you train enough, you'll notice compared to someone who has not trained and has not trained enough because you hit that wall, you know.
Yeah,
Not China wall, but it's like it's the physical and mental wall.
physical
It's
physical mental
yeah,
wall. Yeah.
yeah, which kind of a lot of the time coincides with China wall, but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
What's crazy is I remember racing in the one man and just, getting to China walls, and then you've raced 32 miles, and then the race starts at China walls
yeah,
because now you're duking it out with 3 or 4 guys.
yeah,
And it's funny, I was talking to Dave and he was saying like, yeah, it's funny. It's like 32 miles to the start of the race. And it's
yeah,
like, a lot of us guys were kind of like, thinking and mapping out in our head, like, oh man, it's going to be brutal because are we going to try and pump in as much as we can? Are we going to lie down on your belly? Hopefully there's some self swell, so like we're kind of like training, doing runs, and then like coming down and just like paddling to get our muscles activated. And it's tricky. We've been talking to the race organizers and seeing what the possibilities of ending the race out of China walls would be versus paddling and making it all the way in. Um, and this is all granted because like, if you make an error an hour into the race, that ruins your whole line. You might not even make it to China walls,
yeah,
you know?
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's like I said, it's on the foil, it's very different because on a canoe or a sup board, you can correct your line by just brute force and paddling. You're not going to be surfing or moving fast, but at least you can get yourself back on course. Whereas when you're on the foil, you really got like a minimal like margin of error, and it's like I said, I'm terrified of it. you know because like I know how important or how um technical it can be.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, it can all go wrong quickly. Like you said,
Oh,
one error and all of a sudden you're off the line and you're coming in at Waikiki instead.
yeah. We were saying like, hey, just tack on the 8 miles, let's just finish at Kaimana. It might be just a way better line.
Yeah.
um and it would just be
Yeah, which is
30
funny,
minutes
right? You're
more.
saying let's go further to make it easier, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
it's the angle is way better
yeah,
you know
yeah, it is. Yeah.
that would
Um,
that would be better.
yeah. How many of the local boys are doing it? How many of the crew are signed up?
um probably within our group there's probably 6 to 8 guys and then there's a handful of guys from Outer Island, a bunch of guys from Maui.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it'll be interesting. There's a lot of great talent,
Yeah.
you yourself included, Kyle Henney,
Yeah. There's,
Kane,
yeah.
Jack. Then there's all these guys. It's I'm stoked because that's what makes Molokai so epic is how prestigious it is because we have the best water athletes coming around the world to compete in this race, and so
Yeah.
that's exciting enough in itself.
But,
It's not only to test yourself in the most challenging waters, but test yourself against the most challenging competition too.
yeah. Oh, it's like the world championship of ocean paddling or ocean racing, I guess, is how I've always
Yeah.
said that in my head. It's
Right.
going to be really interesting. I'm excited because one, I have never foiled the channel, but two, the last time that foil for Molokai was on was 2019, and think about how much has changed in terms of foils, boards, like what we know since 2019. It's
Yeah.
actually like to me it's like a clean slate. Like I've like in terms of form guide, I've got no one has any idea. Like realistically, no one would have any idea where anyone sits because
Right.
it's like Kyle Lenny, obviously,
It's a clean
is the
slate.
defending champ, but Kane's been posting some seriously quick times. I feel like I've got to, I've done the channel before and I've foiled some long distances, but foiling long distance compared to 50Ks as fast as you can is very different. So I'm just excited to be there. And then there's, Jack Ho, who, lives where the finish is more or less. And I'm excited. It's going to be a fun couple of weeks of racing, M2M, Hood River, and then Molokai.
Yeah, it's gonna be a busy month, and we're all excited for it. Like I hope it doesn't sound like I have a super like loser mentality of it, but I've always thought, and I remember doing the Maui to Molokai last year, and just having these reflections or thoughts that, it's awesome that our sport's progressing forward into long distance races and competition, but it's still so young, and it's still like anybody who crosses a channel or completes a race, it's an amazing accomplishment and achievement. Whereas like like we don't want to get caught up in like who's the fastest. I mean, yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah.
But it's also like it's such a awesome achievement for
Just to
anybody
do
to
it.
complete a voyage like that.
Yeah. And I think it's really important, like what you just said, that we don't get too caught up in like there's the risk that like downwind foiling will be lost to this racing mentality, and it will be who's the fastest, and the fastest I can guarantee you is not having the most fun. Like almost guaranteed.
It's brutal.
It's like it's brutal to be going the fastest. So I've only done a few foil races against like similar competition, and I did a Molokai run, and I was on a Molokai 200. It was back in like 2018, and I got up like first, and within about 2 minutes up on foil, I realized I was no longer in the race because my gear was too slow. And it was like, I'm just going to surf now. I'm not even worried about it. I just surfed, and I had a great run, people all around, and it was fun, but just in the respect that there were people around. But I think, and I've mentioned it before in previous podcasts, but I did this run in Western Australia called the King of the Cut. And so like it's a downwind race, but no longer exists. And we did a sort of a honorary run. We nicknamed it the King of the Cutback. So it was a race, but there were points for who was first. There were points for who was last. There were points for the fastest kilometer, the points for the slowest kilometer, points for getting footage of your buddy, points for being the one who got the footage. Like it made it fun, and it completely changed our like mentality of the race that we were doing. And I think we should we can just self-organize it, but we should organize like a King of the Cutback Voyager sort of event. And it's just like, all you have to do is upload your Garmin and you've got all the stats, and then everyone's like literally, everyone should win something in respect of fastest, slowest, furthest distance on the run, the shortest distance on the run. So I'll get a list and I'll share it with you. But just to make it fun and like encourage people to do it and be a part of it and not get caught up in who's first.
First, fastest, Yeah, no, that to me that's super important because I think there's a lot of people who are great foilers who are maybe like nervous or not even curious about racing and doing speed because like you said, there's so much different ways to have fun,
Hmm.
and fun could mean so much different things to different people, right? Like,
Yeah.
like I said, we've been training. I've been going with Andrew Gibbons,
Yep.
long arm ape,
Yeah,
and
I
he's
know
he's amazing. He's fast.
he um I used to work at the local shop here in Sydney.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
going with him. I've been going with Eduardo. He's the kid that rides Axis,
Yeah, he's
and
ripping.
he's ripping. I've been having the hardest time keeping up with these guys, but it's like the whole run. There's nothing like fun about it. Like you're just kind of pumping the whole time. You're
Yeah.
not in you're not in rhythm at all, and it's just your heart rate's up the whole time. But like to me, like going fast is fun, but to me, like maybe the more influential part about voyaging is just being nice and relaxed, efficient, doing turns when you want to do turns, having that ride and glide and going as long as you can.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I said, it's weird to box in the sport to competition,
Yeah.
but yeah, competition is great for our sport because it's going to help it grow. It's going to get international attention and a lot of big companies shifting their focus towards it. But
Yeah.
it's there's a lot of cool things about the entire sport itself.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. I think it's exciting to do some racing, but I'm almost more excited to get over there and just, get some runs in with the local crew, because
Yeah,
that's where the fun's at.
it's just the community. The community is special, right? And it's like I'm thinking back, and when you start foiling, like you can see a total stranger in the lineup and just be like, "Hey man, nice board. Like,
Yeah.
what are you riding?"
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
if like how's it feel? Like if you're surfing somewhere, you're never gonna say that to some stranger like on a normal surfboard, like, "Hey man, cool board." Like maybe, but like
Yeah.
like
I'd
you're
probably look at you
definitely like,
funny.
yeah, you're definitely reaching out to connect more. Um, and it's almost like you recognize that the struggle that you went through to learning and falling 100 times before you have your first successful ride, that guy went through too. So you instantly have a bond.
Yeah.
And then, like when you see that person who's foiling in the surf lineup and now they want to start exploring downwinding and doing runs, your admiration and respect goes for them up even more. So it's kind of like, you're stoked. You instantly connect with these strangers on your island, across the world,
Yeah.
like this is my first time chatting with you. I feel
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
we've known each other for years,
Fully.
but it's just
Likewise.
we're on the same wavelength of understanding the sport, the love, respect, and admiration that we have for it.
Yeah.
That it's it's such a unique community.
Seriously. And I guess a lot of
Nothing like
people have compared it to like the early, like the 60s surfing. Like it was just, and obviously that was a while ago now. But it's I just hope foiling doesn't become what surfing has become. Not no
mm,
disrespect to surfing, but it's just there's this aggro,
yeah,
and
yeah,
yeah, a lot of people have commented like 99% of foilers are really good guys. Like they're good people. Like they as you said, they'll say g'day, they'll ask what you're riding, and there's this friendly aspect to it all. And I don't know how
I think it's I think it's I think it's cool too, right? Because like you said, you really have to like die to your ego, right?
yeah,
So in order for you to come out onto the top and do the level of foiling that we're doing, downwinding or prone surfing, like you've literally have to be so curious for learning, not being afraid of struggle and failure, and just have no ego. Like even when we're learning how to beach start, we're in Waikiki doing beach starts, and it's funny because you have all these like strangers who don't even surf at all, like laughing at you because they think it's so easy, but like beach starting is tough.
yeah,
But it's just you have to have the mental capacity and endurance to and you have to die to your ego to be like, I don't care, like
yeah, yeah,
whatever. So it seems like people are more similar and alike in that sense
yeah,
when we're all foils. That's why we can connect so much.
yeah. Good for the soul. I reckon. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it's just giving into the
Mhm.
ego and just like good for the soul. You know, it's everyone's gone through a hard time to get where they're at, like no matter how you look at it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Everyone starts at zero, you know?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We all
Yeah.
struggled. What else do we want to chat about? I like really I wanted to chat to you about like your learning progress, um, the prone paddles which we've done, and then the racing that's coming up. But what else did you want to kind of chat about or
Um,
leave us with? I know you're conscious of your time as well.
yeah, I'm like I said, I'm so excited because I feel like we got the best sport in the world. We got the best community in the world, and we're in such like a infant stage of gear racing. Like to me, I'm so excited because, like it's like I'm happy that companies are starting to like sponsor guys and come out with new gear, and it's exciting because like like here in Hawaii, maybe like 15 years ago when I was paddling, it was like our dream to like become professional paddlers or make a living or just even be supported.
Yeah,
um but like it was just like it's not comparable to like Tahiti, where in Tahiti like paddling is a professional sport and guys make a
mm,
living off of it, like a good living.
yeah, yeah,
But it's exciting because now like we can start seeing glimpses of that with foiling. And it's just pushing the sport in so much different ways, but it doesn't even need that because like you said, it's foiling is good for the soul. It's made people happier, it's made people healthier. It's given people a new stoke and new purpose. Like I'm always pumped to see like, there's like, older guys like Jeff Chang or Greg Stuber, they're like in their 60s and they're pursuing it and you can just love and cheer them on. But you're like, oh man, like I feel bad. If these guys are in their prime, they'd be like so pumped. But either way,
yeah,
you're so stoked for them because it's giving them like a cool little like forward purpose. And, and,
yeah.
and
New lease on
I
life.
think that
Yeah,
yeah, I think that to me that's the most healthiest thing is when you're a grown adult and you think you're at the top, it's just getting chopped down at your knees and and being reminded that like nah, we're it's always great to learn, and have goals and hit these goals. And I think that's what's making people happy is having these goals, hitting these goals, being in the water every day, and just being addicted to learning. You
yeah,
know,
for sure.
it's beautiful.
It is. It really is. I think that's if you think you've got nothing to learn, then you're you're kidding
You're in for a
yourself.
surprise.
Yeah, you're in
Yeah,
for
you're
a
in for a
surprise. Yeah, it's
yeah.
yeah, and likewise, I actually just recently at a camp, like going on that sort of older, there was this, was he 70? Oh, I'm gonna, he's somewhere late 70s. He was almost to 80, 76. I think he said he was 76 and a half, and he was
Wow.
he kite surfed, kite foiled, wing foiled, and we are teaching him to surf foil for the surf time. He'd never surfed before. 76 and a
Awesome.
half is and we got him in the waves on the last day of the camp, and you should have seen the grin on his face, and I was on the camera
Smile,
just
yeah.
losing it. I'm like, holy, he was
Yeah.
just charging. It was like it wasn't perfect conditions either, and we just put him on a bigger board and a smaller foil, and he was just like boogie board foiling basically, and just like out of control. But
Yeah.
like no one else around. It was so cool to see the stoke on 76 and a half year old. It was it was proper. Yeah, it was
It's
amazing.
amazing. It's
Yeah,
amazing. You learn so much too, about yourself and about the sport, about other people. And it's a process, and but it makes it all worthwhile.
yeah,
Like it's crazy to look back, to early days and think how much we knew. And then now here we are 4 years later with so much more experience, but thinking like how much we didn't know and
yeah,
how much we're eager to continue learning. Because even with gear, I'm still like, oh, what tail should I use? What's my fuse length? How do I
yeah,
pop up better? How do I paddle better? I still can't flat water start, like
yeah,
without cheating and using a bigger wing. So
yeah,
it's cool. I feel like there's always something evolving, and changing and happening, whether it's gear innovation or just like even you know, like when Dave, Jeremy, and Kane, they were like popping up by just like, wobbling their feet,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I'm not even ready to do that. Like I'm still stoked on the learning curve that
Yeah.
I'm on,
Yeah.
but it's like I said, it's amazing because it's almost nonstop learning and nonstop journey.
Mm.
And it's an endless voyage, and there's nothing like it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's honestly I feel so lucky that to be alive in this time, like to be at the age I am, able to do the sport that we're doing, like foiling,
Yeah.
and specifically downwind foiling. I think is that's where I really see the growth personally, just because there's there's never been a run down, like a downwind run, where I've thought it's too crowded, because like as soon as it gets too crowded, like you just traverse out like 20-30 meters and you're on your own again, like in the middle of the ocean or the lake or the river or whatever it is. Like there's so much space out there. And
But but then it's also like so amazing when you're downwinding with your buddies. Like you said, it's so fun to film guys and
yeah,
hear the shrieks and screams of stoke and just speed, and you're just like it's it's like like you don't see guys like dropping in on a wave and getting barreled together and being like they want to go fight on the beach.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Whereas like when we're downwind foiling and we're going with people, that like that's like another level of like stoke and enthusiasm.
yeah, yeah,
That's
exactly.
that's what you need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I did a run with Zane and JB the other day, and I had my camera and I was filming them for more than I was. Like, imagine if you went for a surf and you took your GoPro and you're just filming like your mates the
Oh, you'd
entire
be
time.
bummed.
Yeah, you'd be like, can you film me for a couple? Like, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Oh, that's
So
funny.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
just like
that's so true.
fully frothing out. Like the it's so cool. I love it. I love the downwind foiling, and I'm stoked to. I'm looking forward to doing a few runs with you when I get over there.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. When you guys come, we'll take good care of you guys. And
Yeah.
to me, like I said, that's the most exciting thing is going, meeting people, and taking them on runs. And it's like it's exciting. Like I said, it's still I don't even think it's a phase that we're just all excited to like meet and greet and foil with each other. I feel like this will be forever.
Mm. Yeah.
Just a level of stoic and of excitement. And so yeah,
Yeah.
definitely look forward to meeting all the Aussie boys when they come out,
Yeah.
and getting some good runs, getting some good times in, and even learning things from each other.
Oh, for
That's gonna
sure.
be cool.
Yeah, we'll be leaning on you
Yeah.
guys. Show us the local
Yeah.
tips, the
Right.
local runs.
Yeah.
Like when's the wind good? Yeah, all that stuff
Yeah. Yeah.
for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, yeah. Well, thanks
Awesome.
so much for coming on, Simeon. It's been good to chat to you, and I guess I've followed the Voyager Foilers for ages. Just like loving the content you're putting out, and just the stoke you're creating. So keep doing it. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Thank you, man.
yeah,
Appreciate it. So yeah,
yeah,
we're all stoked to see you guys killing it, and seeing the downwind community in Australia grow. So
yeah,
it's awesome.
yeah. It's coming. It's just a bit. The East Coast is hard to learn. It's been like,
Yeah.
but
I'm
there's a
I'm
committed crew coming.
I'm stoked because yeah, like it's cool because we I've heard before from my friends who paddle, like they get so pumped on like a average or mediocre Hawaii Kai run, and like for us, we wouldn't even look twice to go,
Yeah,
but those guys are so pumped, and they're like, oh, Hawaii's so much better. But like the videos that I see you guys posting and how good the water looks, I'm like, it looks amazing down there. It looks like it
yeah,
can get really good. But
can
I'm stoked for you guys to come out and see and froth. And it's just even being in a new area and being in warm water, blue water, I'm sure you guys would be pumped.
yeah,
Hopefully we get some wins. Pray we get wins.
yeah, yeah. I'm sure we'll get wind. At some point. It's the trades will blow. Yeah, it's going to be good.
Hopefully.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll
Right
let
on,
you get
man.
back to work, Simeon, and I'll be in touch because I'm coming over.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome.
guarantee. Yeah, reach out when before you head out, and we'll make sure to make some plans.
Yeah, definitely. For sure. Yeah.
All
Cheers,
right,
mate.
awesome.